Welcome to Elbow Deep with Wayne. Hello and welcome. We are in episode 5, I think it is now, and I have a guest that is not my mother. So today I have Kim Drummond. I almost said your last name wrong.
Close enough. Drummond?
There we go. So previously, before we even started, I said that I was going to get her name wrong because I've made it into something.
He did.
Yeah. Okay, so Kim is New Zealand's pioneering Lyno practitioner. So becoming the first licensed expert in Christchurch in October 2024. That was an experience. So a little bit about Kim. Her journey into the world of Lyno is deeply intertwined with her passion for the outdoors. And I did it again. Her adventurous. Why do I get stuck on simple words? Adventurous, because it's a sounding thing as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, Kim loves the outdoors. She thrives in physical challenges, whether it be running ragged trails, tramping along mountain ridgelines, climbing sheer rock faces, or racing down mountains on her mountain bike. Her active lifestyle gives her a unique perspective on movement, fascial mobility, enriching her practice and enabling her to help others to achieve their peak physical performance and recovery. How was that?
That was really good.
Good reading?
Yeah, that was great reading.
If only people
Even with dyslexia.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
if only people
really...
knew how much I was shaking.
Yeah, Wayne. No, you've come very far.
So, now that I'm not going to just look down all the time, tell me about Lyno practitioning, or the method of.
So, let's just firstly clear up. Lyno is not about flooring. As much as it could be.
You know, I never put the two together. Oh shit, that's good.
I've taken a little bit of time to think about this because people are like, you do what? Do you like put flooring down? I was like, oh, no, not quite. But I suppose you could almost think of it as flooring for your body. So Lyno, how is the best way to explain Lyno? Lyno looks at the body through the lens of the fascial system. For people who don't know what fascia is your connective tissue that runs around everything in your body. It runs around your muscles, your joints. It joins everything with everything. And without it, it would make movement almost impossible.
Yep.
It's always been looked at as an inert part of the body. In fact, many years ago, they just cut the fascial system away and throw it away, thinking it did nothing. But we have since learned that it's actually an integral part of how the human body functions. And Lyno looks at the fascial system and treats that.
Yep.
So I see where the body is bracing in the fascial system, where it is limiting a person's movement, and release where it is bracing.
It's glad wrap.
Almost like spider web, right? Like,
yeah.
Like, you know, the cobweb that gets stuck on your wind mirrors in your car.
Yep.
That is like it's so strong. It never breaks.
Yep.
It's kind of like that.
So there's actually a lot more interconnecting webbing within the actual fascia than there are in the actual muscle, because the muscle has nice little chambers, but it's the connective tissue on the top of it, all that beautiful glad wrap that potentially gets stuck.
It's so interesting because there's actually 2 layers of it. You've got your superficial fascia and your deep fascia. And your superficial fascia sort of is just underneath your skin.
Mm.
And you can see it just, it slides. But, sorry, before I go off on a side quest, your deep fascia lies right next to your muscle. And in between your layers of fascia, you have hyaluronic acid that allows it to glide smoothly over. But when the body experiences trauma, whether it be emotional trauma, physical trauma, let's just go for physical trauma because we
It's
don't want to
easier.
sound too woohoo. So you have physical trauma, right? You're running, you've twisted your ankle, it's incredibly painful. What the body does, it says your nervous system reacts to it, saying this place is injured, I need to protect it, and the hyaluronic acid starts to densify in that area, so in your ankle, and it doesn't allow that fascia to glide as nicely over each other. But the thing with fascia being interconnected tissue with everything else in the body, now that that area is essentially glued together, it's not moving, it's going to tug on somewhere else.
Yep.
So people will say like, oh yeah, I have knee pain.
Yeah.
I've really like, and I'll be like, oh, what? Like, when did this happen? Oh no, like it's just happened recently. I was like, okay, well, let's just have a look. And eventually they'll come up with 2 years earlier, they had twisted their ankle really badly and they couldn't walk properly. You know, they limited their movement in that area because it was too painful. And your ankle is connected to your knee, unless it's been chopped off, you know.
I mean, technically, even if it had been chopped off, you still have neuron activation, still a
Yeah.
neuro pathway that's still affected.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have those ghost limbs and
Exactly.
things like that. Yeah. But let's not side quest.
I like side quests. I'm really excited to actually do a podcast with you because not only do you do something that is not well known, especially in New Zealand, a beautiful conversation between two people that are nerding out around something that we both have a lot of passion about.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
Like elbow deep level of passion.
Yeah. For me, not that deep. Just fingers. I don't go deep.
Stop. oh shit. Your fingers deep, I'm elbow. Different sensations, I guess. What inspired you to pursue a career in lynotherapy?
That's really interesting. And it all started back in South Africa. As you can hear, I'm not from New Zealand. I may sound almost Kiwi.
No.
Oh, okay.
It's like I sound not Australian. Right. Yeah. We've just learned how to mute ourselves.
Yeah.
Christchurch.
So, as Wayne said earlier, I love sport. I started off years ago doing kickboxing, which is quite a high impact sport. And I met an amazing, she's now one of my best friends, but she's a physiotherapist, which is very handy to have physiotherapists as friends if you are a sports person. FYI, for those of you. Anyway, I then branched into mountain biking and running, and I generally just like to do all the things. But when you're doing all the things and you're putting your body under a lot of stress and strain, you end up with injuries, especially when you're like, oh, cool, I can run 10Ks, maybe I can run 20. Oh, I can run 20. You know what? I'm going to run you know what? 100Ks. Yeah. You know, eventually the body's going to say, whoa, hold on there, sister. Just take a few steps back. You probably have, if you're a sports person, and you'll know this because of your sport, you're probably going to end up with an injury. And my friend Chandel was studying Lyno way back when it was just sort of, I wouldn't say just starting out, because I'll get into the journey of Lyno later. But she treated me, and through Lyno helped bring my body back into a neutral space. Like I was saying, your body, when it comes to fascial restriction, you'll have, say for instance, you won't be able to get full range of motion in your right arm, but your left arm is okay, or your right hip will be twisted up and locked up. When I say locked up, it's just that hyaluronic acid I was talking about has densified and the fascia isn't moving properly. But the other leg is. And so when you've got an area that is locked up or shortened, it's going to end up placing strain on another area in the body. So what you want to do, or what essentially we do, is we bring the body back into a neutral space, which helps to prevent injuries. It also helps a lot with chronic pain. So we find out why the chronic pain is there. So we'll be able to pinpoint it. But Chandel helped to bring my body into neutral space, and I barely got injured on these cords.
Yeah, you're doing fine. You're doing really well.
Yeah. And at that time, I was a school teacher. Yes. So I was an early childhood teacher, and it was always full on and intense. As all teaching is, I have the utmost respect for teachers, having obviously been one myself. And I seriously burnt out. And I've always loved the human body, or it always fascinated me, put it that way, when it comes to health and wellness. And I probably should have started my career path in health and wellness in some sort of modality like that, but I chose teaching. Do you want to know why?
Yeah.
Because of the school holidays.
I can see that.
That sounds so terrible. But
no, work-life balance.
Problem was that I would sleep for the first week of the school holidays because I was so exhausted. I always threw my 100% of myself into my work. And when you do that day in, day out, you do burn out. So, yeah. That's why I sort of stepped out of teaching, and I just loved Lyno. And so I spoke to Chandel about it, and she pointed me to Benita, and I went and did courses.
Yep.
Yeah. And I love it.
So for people who are unfamiliar, what would you describe Lyno Method and its primary objective?
So our primary objective is to go looking for why people are injured. So you'll know this. People come to you and they're like, oh, I've got runner's knee or whatever. We love to label everything, right?
Yeah, we do.
But please tell me, how many people have you seen with like a runner's knee, for instance?
It's proper, like in proper inflammation? Not many. Not many with the proper diagnosis.
Okay.
But in its in the layman's term, a lot.
Okay.
A lot.
Okay. And when you treat them, how many people have you treated exactly the same way?
None. Personally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like it's really hard to standardize individual elements.
Yeah.
Especially runner's knee.
Yeah.
Runner's knee has turned into the new shin splints. Like the true definition versus what people are complaining about. Yeah.
Yeah.
I could rant about that, but I'm really holding back.
I can see that.
Yeah.
It's like sweat beating off your forehead.
Just like, rant. Nerd.
So, and that's exactly the whole thing behind Lyno, is nobody can be treated the same way. So we measure range of motion in the body from your neck all the way down to your toes. We measure all the rotations and the hips, and we don't guess anything. And the reason we do this is so that we can say, okay, so you've got a sore knee. Why is this knee sore? Okay, let's see. Is it up the chain? Like, is it actually from your hip? Is it from your shoulder? Is it from your ankle that you injured 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Because the body does not forget past injury. And that's the one problem, is that it's not a problem, but we treat symptomatically.
Yeah.
So when we're treating symptomatically, we're not actually finding the cause of the problem. And that's why we end up with chronic pain. Because we'll keep treating that knee, and you'll feel better for a short while, but then the knee gets sore again.
Yeah. So for the listeners, what is chronic pain?
In my words, chronic pain is pain that keeps reoccurring over and over and over again. It's not acute injury. So acute injury is when you've twisted your ankle, and the ankle is sore, and then that heals up, right? And you do all your rehab so that it's
no one does rehab.
No.
That's coming from therapists, by the way.
Yeah, nobody does their homework.
No, and they don't know that if you're having to do rehab, that's not a finite. That's for the rest of your endeavor.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll talk about it in a minute.
Yeah, we'll get back there.
Yeah.
So acute pain is short-term stuff. Chronic pain is something that keeps coming back, and it actually is so debilitating that it causes some people not to be able to work and live their lives.
Yeah.
And that is something that I'm so passionate about, seeing people thriving in their life.
Yeah.
When you take that back to pain, your neural pathways, we feed them,
Yeah.
And when you have pain that is so painful, I had a friend who slipped a disc in her lower back. And we can talk about reasons for lower back pain and why a disc slips and causes pain when some people's discs slip but never cause them pain. There's a whole nother podcast to talk about that.
It's just pain in general.
But as we feeding this neural pathway, we're making it stronger, and we actually have to rewire the brain and the nervous system to allow that place to heal. And that's another, what we've realized with fascia release, and I know we're gonna get to the journey of Lyno.
Yeah, we'll bring it back.
Yeah. Is that we aren't actually working with the fascial system, really. The fascial system is what we measure in Lyno, but we're actually working with the nervous system.
Yeah.
Because of the neuroplasticity in our brain, you can rewire in order to help a body get rid of pain. But it takes time. If you've had pain for 20 years, which I've had some people say, how long has this pain been here? How long have you struggled? Oh no, about 20 years. You can't just come to a person once and think that they're going to make you better, that you've had that pain for 20 years. That neuron is like State Highway 1.
100%.
It's State Highway 1 to that pain. And you've taught your body to move in a specific way that keeps feeding this pathway.
Yeah.
You have to completely rewire in order to get rid of it.
So now we're looking at pain management, and we're looking at how pain and the use of pain receptors and the feedback signals and neuroplasticity, and how we can basically construct a different behavior, which is more cognitive body-based behavioral methods to create a more positive outcome associated with pain. Because a lot of people fear pain. Pain is the one thing only you experience. So you only get to perceive what pain is. Doesn't mean it's not there. Doesn't mean that it's insufficient. It doesn't mean that it's redundant. It's very special, and it's very important to identify what pain is and understand that there's different types of pain, and there's useful pain and there's non-useful pain.
I think the hardest thing when it comes to pain, especially for people out there who are struggling with pain, how can I put this? When you go to your physio, when you go to a doctor, when you get scans done, when you get x-rays done, when you get everything done, and they're like, there's nothing wrong with you. Everything is fine. Yeah. There's no reason why you are feeling this pain, but you are still feeling the pain. And that is hard. And your pain is very real. It is very real. And it's your nervous system reacting.
So this leads me into the next one, which is around fascia. Why is fascia mobility critical for overall health? And how do restrictions within fascia contribute to chronic pain or recurring injuries?
So when you have restriction in your fascia, you have limited mobility. So say you can't move your arm back. I have a lot of this. People can't move their arms back and touch their scapula at the back. Or they can't move their hip properly. So Wayne's just adjusting everything for me as I bump it. Because I like to look at the fascial system like a wetsuit. Okay, so when you've got your wetsuit on and it's not quite fitting right, say it's like tight on your shoulder, you're going to feel that tightness all the way into your hip. And you're going to feel that all the way into your foot. Maybe not straight away, but eventually, because there's tightness here, it's going to tug on another area and it's going to cause pain somewhere else. So fascia mobility is really important because it allows the body to move how the body needs to move.
Yeah.
But we are so good at compensating over our injuries. So go back to the ankle. We've hurt our ankle. The ankle pain eventually gets better. We don't do our rehab because no one does their rehab. I'm sure some people do their rehab. The ankle is all jammed up, but it's not sore anymore, because we have to move. We have to keep walking.
Yep.
You might be walking slightly different, and we don't even know it. And that will tug on the knee. And then you'll be like, oh man, I'm really like getting pain on the outside of my knee. And yeah, and then you're like, okay, well, that eventually just goes away by itself, right? But what you have done is you haven't fixed the problem. Your body's just compensated over it. And say you work a desk job and you're sitting at your desk 8 hours a day, but you're sitting slightly skew. So your body is actually going to get stuck in the skew position. But we need to move how we need to move. So instead of our body ending up all contorted because it's all short everywhere, we tug ourselves straight. But that ends up causing the pain. Because we don't walk around like this because we need to walk up straight. But when you lock and you lock and you lock, the body's just compensating over. And Lyno releases the compensation layers to bring the body back to neutral. And we'll often see layers of compensation. So after I've measured the body on a first consultation, I'll see, your neck is, I can see that you've got, your neck is short here and your shoulder is short here and your hip is short here. And I'll release that and it will come right. And as I'm going, I measure and I retest. I'm like, your neck is now right, but your shoulder's gone away. So your neck was holding your shoulder up like this, or however it is, because everybody's a bit different. So I release that, and that goes away. So test, retest. Okay, that's gone away. But now your hip is showing up, and that wasn't showing up. And these are all compensation layers. And it's really hard to describe this because the body is so incredibly complicated. And you're just like, how on earth in one little system can this be happening? I remember with one of my clients, I know she won't mind me saying, but I was struggling with her hip rotation, and I released the left, and that was fine. That went to full range, and then I would retest, and the right would be tight, and then I would release the right, and the left would be tight again. But I've just released the left. How can it just go tight again?
Yeah.
And once again, it brings me to, it's not just the fascia we're working with here. We're working with the nervous system.
Braced mechanics.
Yeah. And it's fascinating because it's always different. And we need to start treating people individually. We can't use the same thing to treat everyone. Because that's not how the body works. Everybody is so different.
I learned that when I started working on horses. And when you start editing, it's understanding how you can potentially stock standard your variables. Because at the end of the day, some form of standardization of practice, you can start accumulating variables and you can start looking at things from a different analytic perspective. Because you're going, cool, I've analyzed this joint is telling me this and this. I can note that down. Next time I will test and retest the constructs of if there's change, if there's no change. So yeah, you're on the money on that. in my opinion. And not a lot of therapists are prepared to even open up that discussion, because for a lot of, especially if you look at other allied health practitioners, be it in pain management or chronic pain, be it in acute trauma specialists, 9 times out of 10, they're too busy looking at the symptomatic release, and they're looking at getting the rehabilitation process in play, that they're not analyzing the individual. What I mean by that is the individual genetic predeterminant, the mental health, mental state, and what physical limitations do they have before and after and during. And I find a lot of people are so quick to jump straight into this rehabilitation process, not really understanding anything more for the individual, and especially in New Zealand, where it's very much built off the ACC model, which is very challenging in its own sense.
It's so interesting because I just want to sort of jump into where Lyno came from. You're talking about this. I think it fits in really well. Lyno started in South Africa and was pioneered by a woman called Benita Kropman. It's Kropman.
I'm not going to ever say her name.
No.
Names are not my friends.
Even I might be saying it incorrectly. But Benita is a physiotherapist. And she treated elite athletes in South Africa. Elite athletes, I'm talking about Olympic champions. People right up there. She is a great physiotherapist. But she got incredibly disillusioned by physiotherapy because she would treat a patient, and then a week later, that patient would come back and be like, Benita, my Achilles. Will you strap me? Will you, whatever. And she would treat them again. A week later, they're back. And she kept treating the same thing over and over. And eventually, it led her to question what she was doing. And I think that is the sign of a great practitioner. Like, if you're doing something and it's not quite working, go back to the books and say, well, why? Yeah. It's important for us to question things all the time. And so she started doing research, and she started sort of looking into rolfing. Wow. I was one of the first people who got treated with the Lyno back in the day, and I had racing stripes. When I say racing stripes, it was manual release of the fascia, so gripping the skin and manually trying to push the fascia against the muscle. It was painful to start with, but it worked. And fast forward a few years, she started teaching. She developed, obviously, continually looking at this method. She would release the whole body, and then she slowly started looking at, well, I can release this part and this part, and she started to draw the dots between all the various lines of fascia, because you've got arm lines and spiral lines around the body, because our body moves in rotations. She was teaching in Korea, because in the beginning it was quite we'd have to work on the skin to get the best release. In Korea, it's quite a conservative culture, and they didn't want to take off their t-shirt or anything. So being respectful of that, she just did like a really gentle technique on top of the clothing, and realized that she got even better releases using this gentler technique that wasn't even touching the skin, which led her to think, well, why? And slowly over time, we've started to realize that it's not the fascia we need to grip, but it's the brain we need to convince that an area is safe to move.
Yeah.
So we work with the SIMS and the DIMS in the brain. So SIMS, safety in me; DIMS, danger in me. And when we experience pain, there's fight and flight. Yeah. The sympathetic nervous system is activated and the body braces. We don't want to be in pain. Our sympathetic nervous system is there to protect our bodies. So what we've realized by working with safety in me, by using a gentle technique that is non-invasive, it's not painful, it's literally a stroke over the skin that is just showing the body where it is locked up, because sometimes people don't know. I'm just like, oh, if I said, move your arm up for me and stretch the underside, you would do that, but without a bit of like a touch for the brain to really know where it's tight, it wouldn't really know. So using that safety in me, it just has allowed the body and the brain to connect and release that fascia, to release the hyaluronic acid. And that's where we are now. And, even Benita says, she's like, I don't know where we're going to be in 5 years, because I don't even think we know. Like, we're just starting to dig into this, into the brain and the power. Like, we all know that we only use 10% of our brain, maybe less
at any given time.
Yeah.
We do use the full aspect of our brain, but in any given time we only use a percentage.
Yeah.
And I have a similar concept where I'm constantly questioning and analyzing things, questioning conventional norms, and going, if this is a conventional norm, why is no one questioning it? And if we understand science, science usually indicates that we constantly question and we constantly seek further. And so when I get told, Wayne, this is it, I'm like, but why? And I end up becoming a person of problems because I'm asking questions. What I've realized over the course of whatever many years I've been doing this, that people don't know, and they're afraid to say, I don't know. Where I can confidently say, I'm always in a state of unknown, especially when I'm treating. And over the years, I've adapted, I've changed. I'm always constantly changing my approach, questioning if I'm doing something accurate. This is your conventional skill set. This is what we get taught. And then you go do a weekend course, or you go off and learn these different techniques, but it never equates to a qualification. It never equates to anything that's tangible. It's always, oh, I just did a weekend course on visceral muscle technique, or blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yes, but what is that tangibly saying about manual therapy then? And if that is a tangible construct, then where are the other practitioners being a part of it? And where's the greater community? That's just my rant. You just spoke about assessment techniques. Can you walk me through one of your holistic assessment therapy techniques?
So, like I said, I measure everything. So I use a goniometer, which it's like a protractor, pretty much, and it measures your range of motion, which just helps me to pinpoint where you're stuck. So we work with an average range of motion. And granted, I understand some people do not fall within the average. But we have to start somewhere. It's like anything, like all medicine. Like medicine has its place. We've got to have a point to start from. Okay, so this is why we have your average range of motion. And then I look to see, are you equal on your left and your right, or is there a discrepancy? My big thing is I'm looking for discrepancies, because it's the discrepancies that shouldn't be there that cause the problem. If you are tight but equally tight on both sides, I'm not too worried about that, because it means the body is still moving in a tighter but a uniform way. It's those unilateral discrepancies that cause the problems in the biomechanics in the body. So I measure the whole body, neck all the way down to the toes. And for people who don't like having their feet touched, I don't have to touch your feet, but
I do.
Feet are like...
Oh my God, we live in a society where no one actually understands the relevance of their feet.
Oh my goodness. And we stand on our feet all the time.
Weight bearing and everything.
And we're putting our feet in the most horrendous shoes.
Oh my God, don't get me started.
Yeah.
And then don't forget, we never understand that we can strengthen our feet. And we can strengthen our hands, but no, we strengthen our feet.
Yeah.
And then I'm the weird one.
Yeah. Our poor feet. Anyway, so okay, that's for another podcast. We can talk about the importance of feet.
It's true. It's literally, that's where my approach came from.
And after I have measured up the body, I have my treatment plan. and I run through that. I start with the large discrepancies
Mm-hmm.
because I want the body to be neutral. And what I'm also doing, like I said, I'm working through the fascia system, but I'm working with the nervous system. So the whole time through the session, I'm actually watching and considering what is going on in your body. Has your body had enough? You know, and it's been quite an interesting experience because you can see it. When people start to get agitated and they've just had enough, then you have to listen to that, because the body will stop responding the way we want it to respond if the nervous system has been overstimulated and throwing itself back into sympathetic. Sympathetic is your fight and flight response. So you have your sympathetic nervous system, your parasympathetic nervous system, and we want to keep clients in the parasympathetic calm zone where they're relaxed. So we run through that, and then what I do is after the session, I give you some homework. Really not hard stuff to do. It's just about maintaining the mobility in that area, but also reminding the body that it is open to moving in that range. Because if we don't do that, you get stuck up again. And another thing is, when I'm doing the measurements, I'm looking and saying, okay, well, how are you sitting at your desk at work? Are you sitting slightly skew? So I can see that in my numbers. I'll say, are you sitting like this and one leg crossed over, or are you standing up and you're slightly twisted? All of that is very apparent. And then the important thing there is to pinpoint what that is, because if you keep going back into that seated position or that standing position, or however, like maybe your bike is set up wrong, you know. Have you had some experience with that, Wayne? No? So if you keep going back into that, you're just feeding the highway, and you're going to come back to me next week and you'll be like, oh, I'm still, I felt awesome after the session, but now I'm stuck again. So we need to actually find out why. So one of my really important priorities is actually helping people become aware of how they move every day. Because you may come and say, like, oh, I've got runner's knee, or and I'm training for a marathon, and I run 70 Ks a week or whatever. And you say, oh, maybe it's my shoes, or it's in my running, or, well, obviously we look at that and we go, well, are you training correctly? Have you pushed it too much? So we
10%.
ask.
What do you mean 10%?
Just go from half marathon this week and marathon next week.
We joke, but they really do that.
But then you say, oh, but I sit at my desk for 8 hours a day. Now tell me, in your 70 Ks a week, or your 8 hours a day where you're sitting twisted at your desk that is not set up quite right for you, where are your problems going to come from?
Oh yeah, no one trains for their ergonomics. Yeah, not at all. They only train for things that is tangible, like an event.
Well, if we think of how we sit and how we stare at our phones and how we're hunched over, our postures are absolutely horrendous these days.
Like, how many times do you see people walk in and they're self-soothing, where they're constantly falling forward, the fetus, I call it the fetus model.
And you say that, and it also, our body posture says a lot about our emotional state.
Oh, no, 100%. Yep.
And some people do that as that they're stressed at work, man. They've got 2 kids, and the kids are driving them nuts. Yeah. They are at work in a stressful job. Times are tough. Their relationship isn't doing great.
Diaphragmatic holds.
Yeah, we brace in our bodies, and we don't even know we're doing it, and we blame it on our running shoes.
Yep. So with that, I just want to piggyback off the parasympathetic nervous system, and I want to understand how your gentle techniques aid the parasympathetic nervous system.
Okay. So your parasympathetic nervous system is your soother. It's your rest and recover, they call it the rest and digest, right? And I wish I had my little chart. So, anyway, don't. Next time. With our gentle technique, we also incorporate breathing and deep, slow breathing. And you'd be surprised at how many people, no, maybe you won't, but don't breathe properly.
Oh, yeah.
They breathe from their shoulders, and they mouth breathe, and it's all up here. And when you are mouth breathing and breathing with your shoulders, you wonder why you're all tight here in your upper traps. Thanks. And just breathing up here is also what heightens our sympathetic nervous system, our fight and flight.
Yeah.
So a lot of people in their lives also don't have time just to slow down and breathe and consciously move. So focusing on your breathing and your moving. I know this might sound a bit woohoo, but hear me out. No?
Nothing's woohoo here. Not at all.
So the breathing, the gentle breathing, helps to calm the nervous system. It heightens the tone of the vagus nerve, which helps.
We've gone.
We haven't even
what,
touched,
like 50 minutes, and we haven't talked about the vagus nerve. That is a record for us.
Yeah, that's about quite central
to
what we do. Is we're heightening the tone of the vagus nerve in order to calm the body down.
Yeah.
And the breathing and the gentle movement and the gentle technique over the skin allows the body into a state of, I am safe, this movement is safe, and I can let it go. Yeah. Because the body doesn't forget its past traumas. You had shoulder surgery 10 years ago, but it's fine now, but it can't move. It may be healed. The surgeons did a good job. You did the rehab, but there's still limited movement because you also have scar tissue in there.
Yep.
And the body still hasn't forgotten the trauma of the surgery. Yep. Even though you are under anesthetic, your brain is not asleep.
Oh, God, no.
It is remembering everything that is going on.
I just want to piggyback off a bit more. You previously articulated about a client without disclosing too much of their personal details and confidential information. What kind of successes have you found, or even limitations?
So, successes, I had an awesome client, and it's taken some time. So, like I said, this doesn't happen overnight if you've had a massive trauma. But if you're patient, especially if you've had massive trauma and continue to have stresses and strains in your life, it does come right. And she really struggled with massive concussion injuries that held her back from really thriving in her life. She struggled with headaches. She had to nap all the time because she just couldn't get through her day. And it has been the most amazing thing to see how, coming from a body that was completely blocked up, and in the beginning, her window of tolerance, when I talk about window of tolerance, it's the body only allows so much for us to do so much. That's what I was talking about earlier with observing the client. But that window of tolerance grows. So our Lyno sessions initially had to be quite short because she would become quite exhausted by them. And then over time, they've now extended that we can push an hour even more with releases. And she's fine. She actually goes on and can get on with her day. And she's started to really live her life. Like she had barely any movement in her neck. From all the concussion, also a lot of emotional trauma, and now her range of motion in her neck, her trunk, her arms has improved. She's running, she's living, she's really thriving. I'm absolutely blown away by how she's moved forward in her life with just allowing the space in her body. And, you know, Lyno, we don't heal people.
No.
I truly don't believe, like, I go to a person and say, here's this technique, I'm going to heal you. That is,
It doesn't work.
It's not like
doesn't
that.
work. It's an outdated archetype.
But I think it's something we've been brought up with, right?
Yeah, it's a conventional norm.
Yeah. If you're sick, you go to the doctor to make you
100%.
better, right?
Pharmaceutical interventions.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. But essentially, we actually heal ourselves.
Mhm.
But we have to be in the space to heal ourselves.
Capacity.
Yeah.
Gotta love capacity is undervalued in our industry.
And I think there's also a lot to say about trusting your practitioner, right?
Yeah.
And the relationship you have with the person who you've come to help you, because chronic pain is incredibly taxing on a person. It has a lot of weight on their mental health, on their family's health, on their, on their whole life.
You become a pillar.
And when someone comes to you and they're like, please fix me, all I'm doing is offering, here's this thing, I can help your body, but you are what actually heals yourself.
Yeah, I think as practitioners, I think people don't really know this, but it's really important for us to also trust the client. Trust that they're telling us everything that's truthful. They're trusting that we can trust them to look after their own health and be an advocate of their own health and their own, endeavors with their body. A lot of the time, there's a lot of like having to trust and almost reintroduce them to their own body. And that's something I have noticed as well, is that we're constantly, it's one thing for them to trust us. It's another thing for them to trust themselves. And then we trust them.
That is that's quite profound, is that trusting yourself, because we're in this world where we keep searching or going to the professional to
Jazz is here. She's saying hi.
We keep going to the professional to give us the answers. But we actually can know that answer ourselves if we are willing to be honest with ourselves about that answer.
Yeah, I mean, and this is a great segue into different, like, is Lyno yuck, you tripped on me. We're talking about complementary therapy, right? So is Lyno therapy complementary to other types of manual therapy or any conventional therapy and treatment plans?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like we all have our space. And, every person has their needs. Some people really don't do well with a lot of pain. And I'm first person to say Lyno is not for everybody,
No.
But it is here because it works. And I always work alongside other practitioners. I work alongside physiotherapists, massage therapists, because we all have our space. You have a client and you can see that they keep coming to you and you're finding the same thing over and over, but you aren't finding the cause or whatever it is. I step in and then I go, here it is, but you're always going to need that manual release every now and again. I can't fix everything.
No.
And
it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
To think otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I had a client come and see me, and he was struggling with shoulder pain. So I found some restrictions in his left shoulder. It was his right shoulder he had pain in, and that was interesting already because it wasn't the right shoulder. So I released that shoulder and it was fine. And then the next week he came back and the right shoulder was showing up. I was like, aha, there it is. And I released it, but he still struggled with pain. And I said to him, you know what? I think you should go see a physio. I think I can't see what's going on underneath here, but there's something else here.
Yeah, limitations.
You know?
Yeah.
Please go and see a physio. And yeah, he actually had a rotator cuff tear, you know, but I'm not going to say, oh, no, I can definitely fix you. It's not, that's just untruthful and not right. I want people to live their best lives. I want people to thrive. I'm not going to hold a person to me because I think I can fix everything. That's just not right.
Yeah. So it's funny. Most people think that I'm that guy. That I'm this person who thinks he can treat everything. And I'm like, I don't have X-ray vision. Like, I can't see through your skin. I can come up with probabilities and hypotheses, and I can do what I tangibly, like what I can actually touch, I'll try to release within the window that is available. But there is this preconceived idea that if you're questioning the status quo, that you can fix everything, and it's like, no, even witch doctors have limitations. You know what I mean? Like, it's and we know this because of the health system. Like, that's why the biomedical model is set up: diagnose, treat, change, diagnose, treat, change, diagnose, treat. Always searching for things, and if anything, you're ruling out. So it's not so much the fact that you get it at one time. It's about deduction, and it's about, okay, working through process of elimination. And as manual therapists, regardless of the approaches in terms of like pain, not pain, deep, soft, doesn't really matter. It's still understanding that we still have a process. We're still helping, even if we're not able to find the pinpoint reason, be it a rotator cuff tear or bone spurs or arthritis in the knee, bone on bone. Because we're still aiding the fascial tension. We're still doing something manually. And I'm a big advocate of that, making sure that we are acknowledging that we're still aiding even if we're missing the diagnosis.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We want our clients to live their best lives.
Yeah.
We want our clients to get better.
And that's why there's that's literally why there's other manual therapists.
Yeah.
I could rant about that.
That's for another one.
Yeah. So with Lyno, explain to potential clients what to expect.
So I haven't spoken about the bunkies yet, have I?
Monkeys?
Do you even know about not the monkeys, the bunkies?
Oh, the bunkies.
Do you know about the bunkies?
Go on. This is good.
So if you are an athlete, there's a whole nother additional assessment that we do. And it's based around a functional strength test. But I'm not testing how strong a person is. I'm testing how functional their body is in various fascial lines. Your anterior, your posterior, your lateral. And I test them unilaterally. So I test the left and the right side of the body. And the bunkie is actually just another name for little bench. And the best way to explain that test is it's a plank. So it's your front plank, side plank, back plank, bent legs plank, straight legs plank. And a functional body should be able to hold each line for 30 seconds with no pain. And so we test that first. If I have an athlete come and see me. Now, an athlete is anybody who gets up and trains for a purpose. You know, they get up 5 days a week and they're training for a marathon. You don't have to win the marathon to be an athlete. You don't have to be Olympic medalist to be an athlete.
No.
You know, I consider myself an athlete.
You are.
And I get up every day and I run, you know, for my mental health. And yeah, like you're training for coast to coast. You're an athlete, I see that look on your face, but you got up, you trained, you rode your bike, you ran, you paddled purposefully. You are an athlete. And
Athlete trauma hitting me.
running away, another session.
Oh, no, 100%.
And so if you're an athlete, I have to test your bunkies to make sure your body is strong enough to not compensate. So it helps me to see where you are compensating in those zones. After the bunkie test, I do my full range of motion test, where I test the whole body, as I've said, with my goniometer. And then I do the releases. After the releases, I go back to my scores from my bunkie test, and if I have found one side to be stronger than the other, this is going to sound bizarre, and I've asked much smarter people than myself about how this exactly works. I hate to say I'm not sure, but it works.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Yellow Pages phone book?
Yeah.
Well, I take one page of that and I cut it into a little rectangle. And I place that under a specific part on your foot.
Yep.
And then I see whether your body is neutral. And if your body is out of balance with that one page, I build you a temporary wedge that you wear in your shoe to activate the neural pathway to that line in your body.
Yep.
And that allows the body to see those muscles and to activate them. Because sometimes, for whatever reason, we have shut down the neural pathway to activate that line. So I build those. But if the body is neutral after the from test, then I don't have to build the wedges for your feet. Because sometimes just by doing the releases from the from test, it brings the body back into a neutral zone and doesn't allow too much tugging or compensation, and allows the brain to see all the muscles in that fascial line. Does that make any sense?
It does to me.
I think we'll have to do a podcast where we actually show what a bunkie is.
Yeah, I think that would be enjoyable.
Yeah. Running shoes with support and orthotic. I see a smile.
What are your thoughts?
Oh, thanks, Wayne. Throw me under the bus. So I'm not a fan. Please don't get me wrong. Podiatrists are amazing and they have their place.
100%.
You know?
We're not taking away.
But from what I do, you put in an insert in your shoe, you are putting a splint in. You are not strengthening the foot. You are not aiding your movement, but you are completely altering your balance. When that orthotic is there, it may be helping alleviate the pain in that Achilles, for instance, because you get a lot of inserts for Achilles pain, but you're not actually doing anything to help strengthen that Achilles or to find the reason why that Achilles is actually sore in the first place. So from a Lyno point, I never say to people, you are not allowed to run with orthotics. In fact, I would love if people could run in a neutral shoe. But we are not, a lot of us, not all of us, a lot of us are not strong enough to actually run in a minimalist shoe.
No.
It actually takes time to strengthen all the muscles in the feet, the ankles, the shins, the calves, the knee, the quad, the hamstrings, firing of the hamstrings, just, the glutes, to be strong enough to run in a minimalist shoe. I wish we could, but where we can start is not wearing hard boots, but then once again you go, oh, I'm a builder. I have to wear those boots to site, because if I don't, I could have my whole foot broken by a log falling on them, or have a nail go through the base of my foot. So yes, then we think of, okay, so you have to wear those shoes. How can we ensure that you maintain the mobility so that we don't have your ankle locking up?
So this is why I'm happy to have Kim a part of the podcast. Thank you, by the way. I don't think I actually said
Oh,
thank you for being
you're
on the
welcome.
podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
I know we're not finished. I'm just chuck it in there now. Yeah, I agree. This misconception, like orthotics have a reason, they have a place. They, but also it's a business. It's a profit margin. We all know that as well. And so it's my job, and a lot of my job is literally to be transparent and go, hey, this is a business move. This is not a business move. And when it comes to podiatry, there's a lot that I could articulate that is therapeutic, and there's a lot that potentially is more business. And I feel like looking at shoes is the same kind of concept. The way they're made now versus how they were 5, 10 years ago. They're built slightly different. Potentially, there's this like this thought pattern that they're designed to fail. No different to a lot of our appliances, same concept. Things are designed to fail. So it's natural to think and question and try to go, well, you want me to wear this? Why? And is this something that I can strengthen,
Yeah.
or are you saying that my small little talus drop is, or my toe bunion, or my XYZ? Oh, I got one leg shorter than the other. I know, right?
You release the fashion; they're both the same length.
Oh, don't get me started. So, like, I get a lot of questions around chiropractic beds and pillows. I get that discussion all the time. Like, well, do I need a chiropractic bed? I'm like, it's a bed, sleep. Recovery is number one. Like, as long as you find something that's working for you to sleep, then we can talk about posture.
Yeah. Well, we can have a whole discussion on sleep positions.
Oh.
I have been doing some looking into that because obviously I have some clients and they're like, oh, could it be how I sleep? I'm like, well, how do you sleep? Like, well, you lie in that position for 8 hours, and it's really not a neutral position to be lying in. But
the ladder.
Oh, but it's so comfy.
I think I deduced the most simplistic variable, which is, can you sleep? If you are sleeping, it's okay.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I get this. I'm tangenting slightly, but I used to get a lot of conversation around like, oh, I've started yoga, thinking that that is enough of a stretching routine, and I'm just like, oh, honey boo boo child, yoga, just like walking, just like running, just like gym. It's something that your body needs to adapt to. And you thinking that it's stretching when you're holding a position for a long period of time, you're actually requiring stability. And I'm like, a lot of the time I see people who start yoga and they end up having significant like issues, normally pain oriented. And I overstretched. The biggest thing I want to say about Kim's therapy, it is incredibly inclusive from my perspective. So one of the things around manual therapy, and I always promote this ideology, is having affirming space, inclusive space, and having space where your identity is not at the forefront. It's important, but because of the type of work that you do, the type of approach that is there, you actually can help an array of people from an array of backgrounds who may not like to have manual therapy touched, who may not want to disrobe, who may have had experience in the medical world where it's been too pharmaceutical and they just don't even want to be touched. So there's the other thing that Kim does, and it's a lot to do with rapid eye movement as well, which is fascinating, and I can't wait to talk to that at one stage, because that's definitely going to help the old brain help deal with trauma. Because we've talked a little bit of trauma and we've touched on it, but there's a lot more that we can talk about of trauma of the brain and how emotions of the brain actually replicate in the body. And sometimes you've touched on a little bit, when you release something, the body has a visceral response. And if there's an emotional trauma associated to it, you can end up being in a very vulnerable scenario.
Yeah. It's so true, and it's so fascinating because for many, many years we've always looked and treated the brain and the body separately.
Yeah, I know.
But I'm so glad that we're getting to the point that we're seeing the body and the brain as one system, and the emotions that go along with it, because for some bizarre reason the brain and the body can't really differentiate between emotional trauma and physical trauma.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of studies that you can go and look at.
Yeah, the body just constantly switches and gets addicted to cortisol. There's heaps of all that as well.
And it gets stored in the body.
Yeah.
You know, it's we've had clients who have had surgery on their shoulders and come for a release. You know, they've been seeing a Lyno practitioner for many years, and they know that this can help. And they start crying when that area is worked over. I'm not saying everybody's going to burst into tears.
You might. We got tissues, it's fine. I'm no human, you're crying.
But the important thing is that we shouldn't be afraid of allowing our clients to have that space.
Oh, I agree.
You know, it's because the body needs to release that. If we hold it, it's worse for us. We have to heal, like anything, you have to release it.
Yep.
You have to let it out. And once again, I don't push this topic on people. I just provide a safe space for people to come.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just explain to them what is going on in their body. And if they have an emotional release, I hold the space. You know, I'm not there to judge or dig deeper. I don't do talk therapy. I may say to you, hey, listen, you don't have to tell me what's gone on. Maybe you should consider going to talk to someone. You know, it's not, I'm not trained as a psychologist. I care deeply for my clients.
Well, that is part of a therapist. Like, it's no different to a physio referral. It's the same referral process.
Yeah. And I think some people don't even realize the emotion that is on their body in the first place.
Yeah, I agree. So I've got one last question for you, and then you're off the hook. And then I got the fun task of editing.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Glad I don't have that task.
So as the first licensed practitioner in Christchurch, New Zealand, how do you see the evolution and the growth of the awareness of Lyno Method?
That is not flooring.
That is not flooring.
That's a really hard one because I didn't get into Lyno to have like a massive revolution. You know, I'd love to see more people thriving, because the actual reason why I got back into Lyno. So I studied Lyno in South Africa, and then I moved over to New Zealand. And moving country is incredibly difficult.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you know nothing, you know no one, and to then bring over something completely new is quite daunting to a new populace that you don't even understand yourself. But years down the line, I've made friends, and the New Zealanders have really loved and opened their arms to me, which I'm incredibly grateful for. And so many of them have said to me, oh, I just really struggle with this pain and that pain, and oh, I can't do this because of this. And I'm like, I just sat really badly with me, because I have this knowledge that I know could really help people. You know, really help them to live and really thrive in their life. Like, doesn't matter how old you are. Like, you could be a granny, you know, you could be in your 90s. You know, Lyno, I truly believe, can help everyone because it's so gentle. And I thought, you know, I'd be doing myself a disservice by not bringing this here and showing people the benefits of it. And, you know, if I can help one person, like, for me, that's a massive success.
Yeah.
Like, just the fact that I have helped my one person to start living her best life just brings me the most immense joy for her, You know, it's not that I think, oh wow, I'm so amazing because I
No.
help. No, I'm truly just stoked for her because everybody deserves to live pain free.
Yeah.
You know,
functional movement without pain.
Yeah.
That's all most therapists are after.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, seeing that in more people is winning every day. You know, I truly believe that Lyno helps people. I mean, it helped me. It's helped so many people that I've worked with. So,
And it's a really good, useful option for me. So as a therapist, it's really beneficial if something basically is not working on my level. I can then go to you and say, hey, human, I've got this individual, and then it'll be nice for that person to experience a different therapy and that it's separate from the conventional ideology.
Yeah.
But still holds that standardization of practice.
Yeah.
Superstar.
Yeah, man.
And you survived an elbow deep with me.
Ooh. Fingers deep.
Fingers deep. So I think we can actually. So how are people going to be able to contact you? What's the best way to get in contact with Kim?
Or get in contact with Wayne, probably.
Fair. Like, comment, and subscribe.
Yeah. Well, you can find me on Facebook.
Yep.
You know, if you're old and have Facebook like us. Yeah. So Lyno Christchurch, the Lyno Method Christchurch. You can find me on Facebook. Drop me a message, or get in contact with Wayne, and you can find me.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And like I said, this is not for listeners. It's for us.
Yeah.
And it's us to get used to talking in a way that we're sharing knowledge, sharing experiences, but also inflating each other at the same time.
Thank you for having me, Wayne.
Therapists should always support other therapists.
Absolutely. I mean, we're all here to do exactly the same thing.
100%.
Yeah. And that's to help other people feel better.
Yeah. It's always the business side. I find that's ruthless in the industry of healthcare practitioners.
I can't. Yeah. I'm the worst at business. I can't be in sales. I just can't. Fuck. I would give everything away for free.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I'm like, here.
My accountant shouts at me. He's like, "You need to."
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, my poor accountant. Yep, I hear you on that one. Yeah, but that's also why I think it's really important to have a community of not just people who inflate each other in terms of community support, but also a community of therapists interacting and being able to have a safe space where we can communicate, have a point of, there's a real sense of being able to communicate to a person, do some case study and go, hey, this is what I've done. What are your thoughts? How would you change your approach? Have I, and learn from each other's experience and background and skill set.
We can all learn from each other all the time. And I mean, I was actually just chatting to a friend of mine the other day. We have these like curves where you've just learned something new and you're like, confidence is up here. Yeah. And then you learn a little more and you're like, I know nothing.
The paradox.
And I think we're always, at the bottom of the curve. Like when we're working with the human body, I always have questions. I never believe that I know enough stuff. And I've got so many books that I'm trying to read. And it's not very good for me because I'm a very slow reader. But I just never feel like I have enough knowledge, and I just love talking to other therapists to see how they do it and what they think about stuff. It's fascinating.
Well, I would love to have you come back and we do this more and more and more. And I would love to watch this in a year's time and actually do a reenact in a year's time and see if we can build upon what we've already discussed today. So,
who knows where Lyno will be in a year's time if I know Benita.
I'm committed to having you in a year's time to have the same sit down conversation.
Let's do it. Yeah. Pencil it in now.
Penciled in. It's already on my little piece of paper that I've been referencing it.
Sweet.
So that being said, that's us. We're done. Thank you very much for listening. If you had listened, and thank you again, Kim. Absolute pleasure to be.
Thank you. And you too.
Should we do one little? There we go. Thank you and good night.
Good night.